Okay, let's see what the papers have for us. We will start with Leadership newspaper this morning, and the headline there is talking about insecurity. No negotiation with bandits, Northwest governors vow. That's on page 4. And just above that, you see 2 courts give conflicting orders over arrest of Fubara's chief of staff.
Nigeria Air Deal under investigation with the EFCC KMO. But the Nigerian Express looks at kidnappers hit Abuja again, snatch 2 sisters, demand 30 million naira ransom. 4 Kano kidnappers arrested after kidnapping, collecting ransom in Edo. And of course, you also see that story on EFCC traces 7 billion naira, but the story is on page 9.
Yeah, and that same story is what the Daily Sun leads with. Terrorism. EFCC links 7 billion naira to religious body. Accuses faith organization of protecting money launderers. That's the top headline on the Sun newspapers. But if you go just beside masthead, you see CBN moves to reduce banks' risk exposure. Releases new compliance template to sanction defaulters.
Nigerian pilot looks at exposed. EFCC boss says commission uncovered religious sect laundering money for terrorists. That another religious body was found protecting money launderers when funds were traced to his account. Expresses regrets that religious bodies would be laundering money for terrorists. And final rider says vows to probe anybody suspected of financial crime, including religious leaders, on page 8.
The Daily Times. And it leads with EFCC indicts religious bodies for terrorism, money laundering. That story is trending. Virtually all the papers have it. And the writer here on the Daily Times says court blocks agency's attempts to recover 13 billion naira. That's on page 5. And lower, when you go lower below the picture story, you see court orders arrest of Rivers Chief of Staff over burnt assembly complex. The crisis in Rivers State still doesn't seem to have come to an end yet.
Just after being inaugurated. But this Naira free fall. Senate summons CBN governor on state of economy as currency plunges further to 1,520 naira per dollar. Apex Bank rolls out fresh guidelines to commercial banks, and that's the rider to that story. But reps direct Federal Fire Service to refund 1.48 billion naira COVID-19 funds.
To First News now, EFCC uncovers religious sects laundering money for terrorists behind 7 billion naira fraud as anti-graft agency plans fraud risk assessment for presidency, National Assembly, others. And of course, below the picture story there, you see the headline, Senate summons CBN governor on state of economy, Naira free fall.
Nigerian News Direct, Naira depreciation is how it leads this morning. CBN sets new foreign currency exposure limit for commercial banks, accuses banks of hoarding FX to increase profits, and that's on page 10. Above the masthead, you also see that story, 7 billion naira fraud, religious organization, pipeline for funding terrorists, EFCC alleges.
The People's Daily leads with the story, court orders arrest of Fubara's COS, 5 others over terrorism, DPO's murder. It's the story is on page 5. While if you just look below the masthead, push bandits of Zamfara, Governor Lawal directs 2,646 inaugurated guards. General Ali Gusso, okay, that's gone off now. There's a rider to that story, really. But the story is on page 6 of that paper.
New National Star looks at Jonathan government used 4.6 billion naira on, of course, NSA fund to organize prayers against insecurity, says EFCC. 78 companies allegedly received contracts without bidding, and that's on page 2. Alleged terrorism, killing of DPO, court and orders arrest of Fubara's chief of staff, 5 others on page 2.
Now to the Daily Trust. Amid insecurity, NEF Ohaneze, CSOs angry over Tinubu's private trip to Paris, is on top of the situation. that's coming from the presidency. The story is on page 4. And when you look at the bottom of the page, Naira drops to 1,400 Naira to the dollar at the official market. Senate summons CBN governor over free fall. BDCs close shop. And that's a top story there this morning on the Daily Trust.
The blueprint is still looking at the uncovering. EFCC uncovers religious sect laundering 7 billion naira for terrorists. Associating internet crimes with Nigeria lacks statistical evidence. Tinubu police reject 8.5 million naira bribe in Taraba. Arrest suspect. Rivers crisis court orders arrest of Fubarasi chief of staff here. 5 others on that story.
To The Guardian now, CBN frantically tightens noose on banks' FX operations, speculators, and you see the graphic representations there. Of course, it tells you that something serious is going on.
And that's a bull and that's a bear.
The bull and the bear, yes. Of course, you see, the bull, of course, is the dollar, and the bear is the naira. 1 in every 10 extremely poor people live in Nigeria. That's at the bottom of the page. And that's the World Bank saying that. It's on the business part of the newspaper when you open and go onto the inside pages.
All right. So New Telegraph is looking at Senate summon CBN governor over worsening economy free fall of Nigeria. Sees inflation of great concern. Apex Bank orders lenders to limit exposure to foreign currency. Nigeria is playing with 3,500 to $1 by year end, says Manufacturing Association of Nigeria. You also look at that story. EFCC probing Nigeria Airtel Keyamo.
The Nigerian Tribune says Senate summons CBN governor on state of economy, and CBN limits banks' FX holding to curb speculation. Pressure on Naira persists. Analysts say CBN's new directive has potential for currency appreciation. Naira tumbles to 1,455.59 to the dollar at the official markets.
This Day Today looks at CBN unfolds measures to boost forex supply, mitigate foreign currency speculation. You also want to look at that. Rider sets limits for banks' net open position, removes exchange rate allowable limit for IMTOs, and then says analysts predict $6 billion inflows to market, says policies will have salutary impact on economy. And then, of course, you see Naira falls to 1,530 Naira per dollar on the parallel market. You also want to look at that one just above there. We are going ahead with fund relocation. Says 500 million Naira on tickets for operations not sustainable. Post no concession agreement can stop progress in aviation sector, and that's what we see, and of course other stories there. But let me come to the reviewers this morning. Good morning, gentlemen. So let's begin. Maybe I begin with you, Chooks. No negotiation with bandits, not governor's vow. How did you look at this?
Yes, very interesting. It's but you see, we can't discuss that story in isolation of what happened yesterday at the Yaradua Center, where the EFCC chairman, apparently celebrating his 100 days in office, he called religious and protocol stakeholders to Abuja. Because, he shocked, I was there, and Ola Olokoyede, the EFCC chairman, shocked the audience when he disclosed that a particular religious organization, laundered 7 billion naira of the 13 billion they're investigating, for terrorists. So you see, if you have a religious sect that it's, of course, he didn't mention if it was a Christian or Islamic. He didn't mention the name of the sect.
Traditional religion.
Yes, yes. And he was trying to explain the frustration of the commission, because you see, and like the emphasis, because he's talking about how these bandits get all this funding. If traditional and religious institutions that ought to be the moral compass of society are the ones now helping terrorists to launder money, so it becomes a very big problem, bigger than we imagine. Because on the one hand, you're talking about insecurity every day. we're wondering how these guys get their funding. I mean, because to buy arms and ammunition, definitely you need money to do that. So if religious organizations are the ones now helping these terrorists launder money, it tells us, helps us to understand why it's become a very, very big problem for us too. Terrorism has become a very, very big problem in Nigeria. And I'm happy about what people like Sultan of Sokoto said, His Eminence Abubakar. He actually posed a question to government that if we're talking about fighting corruption, we should start with the caliber of persons we are appointing to government. Because like what the Sultan said, if you know somebody that's been a thief, from primary school days up till when, is 40 or 50 years, then you appoint him and expect that in 4 years he will just turn and become a sinner. It's not possible. And yesterday was very interesting. Vice President was there, and the Onion of Ife raised the question of how the presidency, because the EFCC chairman said something also very startling, that he was going to start with the presidency. He was going to start with the villa. Then in that order, after the villa, he would go to the legislature, National Assembly, and then the judiciary. So
he's already started with the governors.
Yes, he
former
did.
Governors.
Exactly. And the Onion of Ife raised concerns about how independent, how much of a free hand the president was going to give the EFCC, to allow it, to give it room to investigate itself. And I was happy that the vice president was there, and the vice president, answered that question that, as far as they're concerned, Olukayode, and that the president has given him a mandate, that no matter whose ox is God. And this is very, very encouraging, because you see, I talk about a tree making a forest. We've seen institutions where people have headed and they've turned around, not just institutions, even countries. We've seen, like in Ghana, where people like Jerry Rawlings, single-handedly turned around the countries like Indonesia. So it's a people. It's like a truck. It's like a 40-foot trailer, truck. You have what you call the tractor, the front. So it's where it steers to, or the train. It's where the engine steers the train.
And the rest of the body goes.
Exactly, because it's leadership by example. And sometimes and that's why we come very hard on Buhari. Buhari every day was talking about anti-corruption, and that anti-corruption was going to be his mantra. But from what we're seeing now, we see that it's very obvious that Buhari encouraged corruption. And interestingly, Tinubu, whom we were always accusing that he never spoke about fighting corruption, he's one who's actually fighting corruption. Because anyhow you say it, anyhow it's viewed, the EFCC, as we know, has transformed.
So he's putting, of course, the word to action, and action speaks louder than words.
And without making noise about it.
Yeah.
And if you look at the caliber of persons that came yesterday, diplomatic corps, persons from the customs, VCs, because what the EFCC basically was saying yesterday was that it is our graduates, people who are graduates 10 years ago are now governors, they are ministers there. So there's a way to start fighting corruption, because I think the one vice chancellor said something very, very revealing yesterday, that even so many students now, that the lecturers are even afraid of the students because they're into financial crimes, the Yahoo boys, and the kind of money they make, they have bigger cars than even the lecturers. So even calling them to order becomes a problem. So I think it's good that the EFCC is targeting our youth, because it's from there that we get the raw materials for those who will become leaders. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, we must talk about the headlines that speak to insecurity.
Yeah.
It's spiraling out of control from the way it... only yesterday in Kubwa, kidnappers snatched 2 sisters, actually 3 children. And they sent the boy to go back and tell the father that you have to come up with 30 million naira to get your daughters back. And if you marry that with what Chuks just discussed, EFCC indicting religious organizations of laundering money for terrorists, plus the fact that the Northwest governors have vowed that they will not negotiate with bandits. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I thank you very much. But I want to state here that when a nation deviates from the objective of pursuing efforts at national development, and completely abandons the welfare of the people, you have what you have. Let me tell you, what is going on in this country, what works in this country is politics and criminality. And if you even look at that very closely, you'll understand that criminals have even infiltrated the corridors of power. Why you have bandits outside killing people is because you have bandits inside that are supposed to control the people not doing their job. Now, honestly, on the issue of insecurity, we can talk from now till eternity. But the issue is nothing works in Nigeria because there is no clear way that encourages patriotism and honesty. And it is based on that the youth find it very, very easy to incline themselves to the perpetrators of crimes. So when you talk of insecurity, I think it's a deeper issue. It's deeper because the people that are supposed to control the economy of the country, the affairs of the country, are not interested, or they seem helpless. Because if you look at, there is a news story there that a woman sold 2 of her children at 1.8 million.
Thank you for watching. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing so you won't miss out any of our latest video.